Let me tell you why I think that iridology and sclerology should be taught together. I really do. They complement each other perfectly. Iridology tells you a lot about your genetics and the history of your body from the time you're born to this very day. It is very, very slow in responding. Okay, so we've knocked out 2 of the signs in the iris of the eye. Now we're going to talk about traveling lines. As I said earlier, there's 4 muscles in the eye. They overlap a little bit more than this, but I want to show you there's 4 distinct muscles in the eye. So instead of, you would think of cutting, if you're going to put quadrants in the eye, you would go like this, but what you do is you go between the muscles. So the quadrants in the eye are more like if you put an X in the middle of the eye. So this would be one quadrant, this is another one, and this is another one. To be a traveling line, you have to pass a quadrant. So if you have something like this that crosses over the quadrant, that is a traveling line. If it goes like this, it is not a traveling line. If it's like this, it's a traveling line, as long as it goes from one quadrant to another quadrant. Is everybody cool with that? Do I need to explain it in another way?
I don't think so.
Okay. So there's only 2 things that show up as traveling lines. One indicates glandular fatigue or a glandular problem, and that would be a traveling line towards the nose. On the outside, towards the ear, because this would be the ear, the traveling line indicates lymphatics or lymph nodes, which was huge for me because you cannot see lymph nodes in a brown eye. I know IPA says you can, but I totally disagree. A true brown eye you cannot see lymphatics in, or at least I have not in 27 years, 28 years. So to be able to see lymphatics in a brown eye is extremely helpful because it's not typical for a brown eye. That's more of a blue eye problem. So inside gland, outside lymph. So this would be the person's ear over here. There's a traveling line because a quadrant would go like that.
I had a question trying to correlate transversals with traveling lines, and if there was one in your mind.
Not at all. No. What happens for a transversal, that happens on the iris of the eye for people who don't know what a transversal is. But you see how there are these lines here, these fibers? What a transversal is there's such a weakness there in that part of the body that one of these snaps. One of these fibers snaps, and instead of going like the spokes on a wheel or like that, it will go kind of like this because it snapped, it broke. It's just kind of dangling there. That's what a transversal is. That usually indicates there's a weakness in a certain part of the body, wherever that, if it would be in the lungs, it would be here. If it would be in the liver, it would be here, and so on. But this is in the white of the eye, and it has nothing to do with this. If it's on the outside, it means lymph. On the inside, indicates glandular problems. I'm glad you said it because this says traveling lines and transversal sound pretty close, but they're 2 completely different things. Okay, this too would be a traveling line, and it's on the outside, so it would be lymph. Cherie says in Australia, they teach you that it's lymph, but it can be, you have to watch your heart. I don't know why. She doesn't know why. But I just want you to know that's what the Australians teach. But she definitely agrees it has something to do with lymph because the person's ear would be over here. Now there's also kind of like a connecting line, and we're going to cover that. The glandular line is still a traveling line, but it can sometimes, or usually, connects things together. For instance, this one is heading towards the adrenals, and it comes out at the thyroid. And it doesn't even have to go up like that. It can just be this part here. But it's going right towards the adrenal. So that indicates there's a glandular imbalance because it went past the quadrant. Because the quadrant would go like this. So past the quadrant here. But it's connecting these two. So that means this person has a glandular problem that's involving the thyroid and the adrenals. So this is a left eye, and you can see the thyroid area would be here, and this goes down. Although I don't have the picture of it, it goes down to where the adrenals are.
Hey, Mary, can I add something here?
Sure.
One of the things to remember is to find out, it's really important to know where it started and where the line ends, and that will connect the two.
Right. Thank you. Very good. So although this thins out, it goes like this. Again, this would be the thyroid area, the adrenal area. And it's hard to see, but it would connect the thyroid area. But this is, either way, because it went past the quadrant, you know there's some kind of glandular imbalance. Here's another one. It's, again, a traveling line. Still indicates glandulars, but this one's going to connect the pituitary gland with the thyroid. Now, we often think of the adrenal and the thyroid, but sometimes it's the pituitary gland that tells the thyroid what to do. When you see this particular combination, a lot of times the person's TSH will be fine. And the doctor will say, no, you have no thyroid problem at all. But the person's body is screaming out, thyroid, thyroid. They have no moons in their nails, they have all the symptoms of thyroid. Well, the pituitary gland nags the thyroid. That's what TSH is, thyroid stimulating hormone. It bosses the thyroid around. It says, okay, we want you to work. Come on, get to work. And the thyroid is supposed to comply. Well, if the pituitary gland is too weak, it doesn't produce enough of this. So their TSH will be normal instead of high. And the doctors will say, no, everything's just fine. But it's not. And when you see this scenario, you know that you need to work with the pituitary gland. So, excuse me, the quadrant would be like this. Quadrant could also be like this. So this connects the pituitary gland and the thyroid. That's not the best one. We'll talk about this one in a minute, why you would go from here whenever we get into the lines themselves. Okay, again, from the thyroid up to the pituitary gland, across the quadrant. This is huge because these people will love you to know why their thyroid is not working and why the doctors have no clue that there's anything going on with their thyroid. So for this, I love master gland. I love alfalfa. And if you suspect that you have a pituitary tumor, which one doctor, neurologist that I talked to, told me that probably between 70 to 80% of the people have at least some deposit, hardening, or tumor of the thyroid, of the pituitary gland. It's very, very common. Most people don't even know it the rest of their life, In that case, I would add parsley to the mix. And this is where it starts from. See, it goes right in, right towards that thyroid. It goes right up and ends or the biggest part of it ends at the pituitary gland. And again, here is going towards the thyroid up to the pituitary.